Hi, this is Kylie Koo. Today I'm painting along to a tutorial called Dramatic Sunset, and I'm calling it Turquoise, and it's a tutorial by Artfully Yours with Diana, in which she uses acrylic paints to create a dramatic sunset. Now she's labelling this as a tutorial for beginners, but actually I think it suits all different levels of experience. So I haven't used acrylics on their own for quite some time. I've been more involved with mixed media, and I therefore thought that this would be quite a good tutorial for me to follow along to. So you might say, well, why watch Diana's and watch mine? Well, Diana will give you all the hints and the tips and the actual tutorial, and what I'll be doing in my video is telling you where I've maybe done something slightly wrong and had to go back and change it, or just some other things that I've learned along the way. So I'll leave the link to Diana's up above. So I started off here following the same steps as Diana, but I didn't have the exact same colours, so I put that turquoise down and it didn't start to blend the way I would have hoped it would have, so I had to start to take corrective action. And you'll see that what the turquoise did was actually to start to go right over the orange and all of that. So I now start to try and lighten it, but it was the wrong thing to do. I really should have just stopped at that point and dried it off and started again. But I didn't, I kept going. But that's the thing about art, you keep going and you get to the place that you want to be eventually. So I quite liked the way that was starting to give the streaked effect, but it wasn't actually what I was looking to do. So at this stage I dry it off and then I start again with the orange. Now, as I say, my paints were ever so slightly different to Diana's, and I'll leave a list of the paints that I used in the description box below. I am, if you've watched my videos before, I'm a great believer in using whatever you have to hand. I should also say that the canvas board that I used was actually a bit smaller than Diana's. That was probably another lesson I should have learned, was in terms of scaling down right from the start, because I'm not sure I did that right away. But that's okay, these are all things that we learn from. So I've started to use Indigo there to try and blend it in. I think at this stage Diana had been using cerulean blue. But again, I was feeling it was just a bit too bright and not blending in, so I've gone with some more white again to see if I could tone it down a bit. Alas, I still didn't like it, so I'm back again, starting with the orange. So I think you'll see if you compare mine's with Diana, mine's is probably slightly more muted in terms of colours, but that's fine. I wasn't looking to make an identical copy. It's ended up being closer than I thought it might have been, but I didn't set out to make it identical. So just using some white now to block in the sun. And now just starting to create that halo effect around the sun. Now the rest of my paint by this point was actually dry. I dried it off, so it's not at this point picking up any of the other colours. So towards the outer edge there I was trying to keep the paintbrush drier and just really dragging it over so that it wasn't a solid effect. But you'll see that I keep going back to work on this a bit more until I'm happy with it, and later on I'll go back to it again. So I'm now starting to put the clouds in. I don't exactly copy the way Diana's got it, I just put in what I think will fit with what I've got. And this is where there was probably another lesson to be learned for me. and I'll come to that in a second. So I start to put in the colour on the bottom half to, or maybe third, and you'll see that it's a slightly different colour than that above. I think what I should have done was to actually bring all the colour down the full length of the board before I started to put the clouds in. So I'm now trying to get it to match as close as possible that above. I can't do that, so I've got to start trying to fill it in between the clouds. I could have just painted over the clouds, of course, but I decided not to do that. So I'm now feeling that it needs to be darker, so just using some of the indigo again to try and bring the colour up a bit. Still trying to get it in between the clouds. And now just toning down the sky a bit where I felt it was too red. And I think Diana does something similar, but you'll see here I just decided to take those couple of little clouds out. They were too small to bother about trying to work around. And now I go back to the orange, just bringing some of it down from the top, just trying to get the orange and the pink to blend in. A bit more work on the clouds. I think it's quite a good way to do these because each time you go in with another layer it just seems to help to build it. I think you start to get more of that kind of 3D effect. Now just introducing some of the colours from the sky into the clouds, just to show that they're picking up those colours. And you see here that it does pull up a little bit of the indigo there, but that's fine. And now just reintroducing those clouds that I'd taken out earlier. Back to the sun again, because just feeling that it needs a bit more work. This time trying to get away from that kind of feeling that it had of just being a big ball, a big circle. So drying it off, and I must have not pressed the record button because you'll see I've got the first branch in and also the trees in silhouette below. But what I discovered was the base colour was actually too dark and it was very difficult to see the trees. So I'm now going over that part again just to lighten it up so that when I put the trees back in they will look more in silhouette rather than in total darkness. And I think that's the thing about acrylic painting, and in some ways it's pretty forgiving in that you can go back and go over it. Again, the only thing I would have done differently is to have painted the whole base before I started putting in the detail. So drying that off, and now going back to put in my trees that are in silhouette, following exactly the way that Diana had said to do them, and it's a nice effect, this. Just using a fan brush. and I'm much happier with those because I can actually see them now. So going back and just over the line, just thicken it over the branch, just thickening it up a little bit, and then I'll do the other detail of the branches, and there we go. So again, drying it off. Now at this stage I think Diana had put in the two birds, but I decided, having learned my lesson from other stages, I decided that I'd go back and finish off the clouds at this stage. So I'm putting down some white paint and then taking a dry brush and just brushing the top of the clouds out, and it just gives that kind of fluffy effect, fluffy misty effect. Again, Diana explains all of that. Going back to the sun again because I'm still not entirely happy with it. So starting with white, and then I'll go back in with some yellow and some orange. Again, just trying to create that halo effect. And now I'm doing my two birds, or as I call it, my two crows. Crow just being crow. So I've got the two of them in, and now what I'm trying to do is just to show where the sun is kind of highlighting the branch. I make the line a bit too thick in places, but I do go back and correct that. So a bit of white and then a bit of orange. So this has been a really fun project to do. I learned a lot from this. As I said, I hadn't used acrylics on their own for quite some time, so it was really good to get back into using them, and you know, feel that I learned a lot from this. So I would encourage you to check out Diana's tutorial. And I hope you've learned something by watching my video as well. Even if it is only not what not to do. Try that again. Even if it is only what not to do. So now I'm just putting little flecks on the tops of some of the trees. Again, just recognising that the sun might just catch the tops of some of them. And that's it. So overall, I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It took me around 1.5 hours to do, and that included drying time. So a very pleasant way to spend a few hours of my day. So please check out Diana's video, and I do hope that you'll join me again for another video. Thanks very much for watching.